She should talk to Southjax and there's one other organization that has they're the official places for
Think about it already.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 26th meeting. Did you cut this one? You're good? Okay. The July 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of South Jacksonville. Isn't it a great day to be a Rotarian?
Yes.
Conversations. If you're attending on Zoom, we welcome you also and ask that you mute yourself. Thanks to Michael Huddling and Katie Bowling for being our greeters today. And I would like to invite Michael up to lead our pledge and prayer.
Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate each day that comes to us and use it to its fullest. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give the best in our family life, fellowship with others, and service to the community. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Michael. Ed, were you slated to do guests and visitors? Sorry. No, that's okay. I'm not sure we have any guests and visitors other than speakers.
Let me just check with Patty. I'll check. I'll get it, no worries.
Okay, all right. Right. Inches. All right. I'm going to ask Julia Kalinsky to come up and provide us with our family Rotary updates.
Come on, Julia.
Good afternoon, everyone. So for birthdays, we have past President B4, July 27th. Happy birthday. We have Lynn Bauman, July 30th. Happy birthday. And we have Tyree Boyer on August 2nd.
All right.
Years of service, Rick Morales is celebrating 32 years on the 31st. And for wedding anniversaries, we have past President Bill Langley, July 21st. Hopefully that's not a surprise.
A little bit more.
And Bill Strayer is August 3rd.
Julia, and also I wanted to update everyone about Leslie Red. I don't know if y'all were aware, but her sister had a very serious heart attack a number of weeks ago and then died this past Sunday. So she's likely to be out for a few weeks. Her family's up in Maryland, so please keep her in your prayers. All right, I would like to ask the following members to please come forward. Dooley, Chris Roberts, Mitch Ogani, and Michael Huntley for special presentation.
Make them sing.
All right, each of you has shown yourself worthy here of a blue badge. So thank you very much for joining us, and we are so happy to have you here. Look forward to many, many contributions and involvement in what we do in service to our community and world. So thank you very much. So let me see, you're Katie. So there you go, Katie. And then we
Thank
get
you.
that one back.
So now I have to start scanning, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
First, yeah, Michael, thank you.
So now Patty can charge your account. All good. Happy dollars you are in today.
Like,
All for
Rosemary is always on top
$5
of
limit.
She needs your Amazon password though.
I use my mom's.
Sounds amazing. Congratulations to all. All right, Lori, you on?
Lori is on.
Lori's on.
Yes, I just had to unmute myself. Can you hear
Got you.
me?
Lori's here to share something about one of our contributions from last year. All right?
All right, Lori, you're
Thank
on.
you, President Charlie. Thank you. So we've partnerships with the World Water Alliance, to my knowledge, since 2017. And this year we did our fundraiser, and that contributed to one of our international water projects. So I would like to read you a thank you letter. Dear Southjax-Rotary, on behalf of World Water Alliance of Florida, I would like to thank you for your generous donation of $4,000. With this donation, El Tablon, Honduras project has been completed. We look forward to our continued partnership. Our next project is El Clarinero, Honduras. It would be great if we could arrange a site visit with interested Rotarians. Seeing the town in person always makes a lasting impression. And also, the casino night was amazing. Sincerely, Heather Kavanaugh, President of World Water Alliance of Florida. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions.
Thank you, Lori, for sharing that. All right, I want to remind everyone again that there will not be a luncheon meeting on August 9th, but there will be a social at Blue Bamboo that evening. Time still to be determined. Want to let everyone know that the board has approved a nominal charge of $15 per person or guest. We support these evening socials with your luncheon funds, but also in reviewing situation, we think it's appropriate to provide for a little bit of a surcharge for those attending, and we would.
We're going to start at 5:30.
We're going to start at 5:30.
Yep.
Okay, very good. And we encourage you to bring prospective members to join us. It's a great way of getting to know about our club and the good things that we do and how meaningful it is for our members. So, all right. Michael, you should have probably had a seat closer up here. I'm going to recognize you for a craft talk. Come on up. So this could be a little dangerous.
I described originally as asking me a question on what the time was and building you a watch. So I've taken some notes to try to keep this down. We'll start off with a couple things about myself. I'm the oldest of two children, grew up in Maitland, just north of Orlando. Both my parents were teachers. Went to UCF, go Knights. Spent 20 years in the car business. Both my parents would probably have loved me to be teachers, but I just wasn't that guy. I was a gearhead. After 20 years in the car business, the market kind of changed after 9/11. And so I decided to go a different direction, and I got into real estate. My degree was in finance with specialty in real estate anyway. UCF didn't have a real estate degree program at that time. That predates their real estate program. So I decided to follow it and get into real estate. And by that time, I knew I didn't want to sell real estate because I'd sold cars for so long that I decided to get into appraisal instead. And so in 2004, I moved with my wife up here, and she was working at the Times Union, and got into appraisal, and it's been just going nuts ever since. Seems like when the economy goes down, I get busier than when the economy is going up. So the appraisers, to tell you a little bit about what I do, we always kind of get a bad rap for, oh yeah, they always put the same price that I have on the sale. And yeah, sometimes we do, but a lot of times we don't. I like to describe appraisal as art supported by science. At some point, I have to pick a number, but the numbers have to lead me in a certain direction. I end up with a range of values, and then I have to pick. So sometimes the range is relatively tight, whatever the contract price is. Okay, that's good enough. Could it be 10 grand off? Sure. Could it be 100 grand off? Sure. The market's not that good. So we do it by lots of different approaches. Many are imperfect. Some of them work out very, very well. Our office does, we try to focus just here in Jacksonville. I've had licenses in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, District of Columbia, Maryland, Alabama. But it's not fun appraising everywhere. It's nice to finally be to where I just focus in Jacksonville. I can get a better pulse of the market. But I have expanded what I do. I used to do primarily bank work, which everybody thinks of when they get an appraisal to buy a property, and I need an appraisal so I can get my loan. But there's a lot of other stuff to appraisal work too. There's a lot of legal work that we do. Jason does bankruptcy work. We do a lot of work for those guys. If you get older and you need to establish your estate, a lot of times an appraisal is required. All kinds of litigation appraisal work is needed for. We do residential, commercial, we do it all. One-stop shop. I'm going to kind of cut it off there because if I start getting into how I develop it, this could last a long time. But anyway, I do specialize in car dealerships, as you can imagine. I spent 20 years in business. Complex income producing properties, retail, office, going concerns, business value, and then highest and best use analysis. A lot of properties are not built to the highest and best use, and sometimes somebody doesn't know what it is. They see a property down the corner that they think is a great deal or it's appealing to them for whatever reason, and they don't know what to do with it. And I help them figure it out. So anyway, till next time.
Thanks, Michael. Harlan, saw you were here. Have you finished your lunch? All right, come on up. Mr. Boss is here. Tell us about Paul Harris.
Mr. President, thank you. So once again, we're kicking off story time with Bill. Bill Trayer, that is, fellow Rotarian who once again cannot be with us. He is deep in the Rotary archives, but he did send us this little tidbit about Paul Harris. My carrier pigeon. Last week we found Paul finally settling down to live in Chicago as a lawyer, becoming profitable around the year 1900, which would make Paul 32 years old. Paul's family during this time was spread around the country. His brother Claude enlisted in the Army in August of 1899. Claude enlisted due to the war between Spain and the U.S., which started over the independence movement in Cuba. These issues reached a critical point in February of 1898 when the battleship USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor, killing 266 sailors. Newspapers cried for vengeance, politicians cried for war, and finally Congress declared war on Spain in April of 1898. The very short war lasted until August of 1898, The Spanish fleets in Cuba and Manila Bay were quickly destroyed by the U.S. Navy. Excuse me. Teddy Roosevelt became a hero at San Juan Hill, and the U.S. wound up gaining almost all of Spain's worldwide colonies, including the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, and a long-term lease on Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Foolishly, the U.S. left Cuba to its own control. Now, I don't know if that foolishly comment was Brother Trayer's or the biographer Fred A. Carvin, but of course, we keep political opinions to ourselves at Rotary. The U.S. lost 1,020 to combat deaths during this war, and over 3,100 soldiers due to disease, including Paul's brother, Claude. He died of yellow fever aboard a military transport ship returning from the Philippines the day before the ship entered San Francisco Harbor. With the turn of the century, Paul's strengthening finances allowed him to become active in several civic and cultural groups. Paul joined the press club, which brought constituents of the newspaper, literary, and publishing professions together for close personal relations. It was also to further good fellowship and promote the interests of its members, goals very similar to those established a few years later in Rotary. It also had a well-stocked bar open 24 hours a day, a nice restaurant, and a lot of gaming. Even though Paul's wandering days as an adventurer or vagabond were mostly over, Paul still could not stay in one spot very long. Over the next 15 years, he took residence in over 30 locations in and around Chicago, even though his business location remained stationary. So while part of him was footloose and fancy-free, another part demanded stability and traditionalism. Buried in this contradiction, Paul declared, quote, his knowledge of Bohemian life in the city was second to none, unquote. So I had to look up what Bohemian life is. So I have the answer, but I would love to ask the audience, what is Bohemian life?
It's a beer.
Our one-track mind president came up with drinking. Anybody else want to? Okay.
It's kind of a hippie life, isn't it?
Very good. Past President Barry was around in the 60s. Maybe he understands the hippie life a little bit.
I had short hair then.
Well, let me tell you what I shot here. The term bohemian applies to people who live an unconventional lifestyle, often with few permanent ties involving music, artistic, or literary pursuits. Sort of a gypsiest kind of thing. All right, founder of Rotary. All right, let me wrap this up. Sorry. As Paul and other self-described bohemians became respected pillars of their communities, they began acting like dedicated, upright, and devoted members of society. Paul's profession called for rigid adherence to specific rules. However, he still loved playing games, a la gambling, and frequenting the more adventurous locations around town. He felt the need to discover the means of accomplishing a transformation from frazzled Chicago lawyer to a respected civic leader without totally abandoning his personal attributes of the Bohemian code of behavior. There is a Bohemian code of behavior. So next week, if I'm once again allowed to come up to the podium, we'll talk about the first few years of the new century of 1900.
Thank you, Harlan. My guess is 30 residences over 15 years might be attributable to a lot of girlfriends, or?
You're trying to peek ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Why don't we take about 5 minutes of table time just to sit and talk? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
The reason why I don't sell them anymore is I don't set those sales tax accounts in the state of Florida. And I don't have one, so I run the risk of activation. Charge. Yeah, I gotta do that. But I sold them and then my account said, I thought, might be really hard to get a sales tax account set up and charge sales tax. But it's but that's not enough. You pay sales tax on the market too. And I tell people to buy it from the website of Amazon. But I don't have to do that. I'm not sure where it is.
95,000. You come from Manchester, right? Yeah, I would probably get off about, I might get off about. Take a right.
Look it up.
No, go down, come up to 95.
95,000.
And then take a right. University Boulevard. And then just take a right, first complex, take a right, down around the half mile. You'll pass it on the interstate, you know, buildings with glass buildings.
You'll see our sign there.
So once I get
The reception.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
COVID test.
Leave my hand down.
Well, not that, oh, man. Show and tell.
All right. Out for a little fun time. I'd like to recognize Lisa Marie for Happy Dollars.
Thank you.
And I'm the first.
Well, I hate to tell you, President Charlie, the minimum is actually $5.
Oh.
So that's my first announcement.
I'll have to know you.
Well, today we will take singles in the spirit of Rotary. The minimum for Happy Dollars moving forward is going to be $5 a moment.
All righty.
And myself and Ed Vaughn will be the judge if you switch to a second happy moment that you're sharing in your time and charge you again. We will also be happy to bill your account. So if you want to pay in cash, you can, but we will also be writing down names so that if you are short on cash in your wallet, like I always am, we can bill your account. And I am very happy to share that and to do that for you. A couple of things though before we get into our Happy Dollars, and I know we're short on time, but so this Rotary year, I've talked to President Charlie about doing something every meeting. And so we're going to do Happy Dollars twice a month. And then we'll do a 50-50, and then we'll also do a raffle like we did last week with either a prize or gift cards. So every week we will have something. And again, if you come short on cash, there's an ATM, we take electronic payments, or we can bill your account. And it's really easy to bill your account, I promise. No trouble at all, we're happy to do that. So minimum is $5 for your happy moment, but we will take singles if you have them. So would anybody like to share? I'd like to open up the happy time.
I'll take this back and bill me $5.
All right, we'll bill you $5. Got it.
I'm happy because as many of you all know, my oldest daughter was diagnosed with breast cancer back in February. She's successfully gone through chemo, and it looks like it was very, very successful. Had a double mastectomy last week and is recovering amazingly well. So there's still a long haul ahead for her, but I'm happy for her.
Yeah.
president to be? Or you?
I know.
He's good.
Big time
Lori's gonna shoot me, but I'm doing $50 for her. She got a promotion this week.
Anyone want to raise their hand? All right.
If I'd have to be billed, I apologize.
Yes, we will bill you, no problem.
I can't
Mr. Harris.
I'll stick with one subject. My daughter has been in Kansas City for 14 years and gone from home for 20 plus. She went there to get married. She has 3 beautiful children. And if anybody had met me in the room a week ago, I would have said there was a 0 chance she would ever come home. She moved home with her husband and 3 children, and she's going to be opening the Florida law office for her law firm out in Kansas City. So we're beside ourselves.
CPR certified babysitter for her, just let me know.
There we go.
She's 15, she's good. William.
I'm financing the broke lawyer.
He's expecting some free legal advice.
All right. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I started out thinking this was going to be $1. So I pulled out $2. I pulled out $2 from one item.
This is gonna be $20. I can see it. Now he owes me $5.
I'll tell you what, just for that comment, there's 20.
Wow. Wow.
Now I've got to insist on $3 for the rest of the month. Anyways, 2 wretched geese by the name of Rudy and Stella, so named by my wife because she loves animals of all kinds, showed up again the 1st of April to build a nest again like they did last year. So Stella built the nest right behind Cindy's chair that overlooks our pond. Out of that came 5 goslings. We went through, raising these things and my wandering around the yard with the hose and the big, the nose nozzle and killing goose bombs on a regular basis. But several weeks ago, everybody learned to fly and they're gone. Secondly, in recognition of our speaker today, Mr. FitzGerald, I wore a special Rotary pin that I've got. It says Rotary Rockstar. These were pins that were given to the members of the training and facilitate group out at the International Assembly, where all of the incoming district governors are trained. We got these several years ago. And it's just a really fun pin, and that was kind of a theme of the whole thing. So that was going to be my other $1. So however you want to split that up, 12 and 8 or 10 and 10 or whatever. But anyway.
Thank you.
I do it one last quick thing though.
Oh.
That is, believe it or not. Anybody remember our 50th anniversary?
Yes.
When we had the incoming thing and, in the hotel and several of us came in and sitting in a convertible. And I had rented an Elvis costume for that. And these are the glasses.
Can we have one more?
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy because I have a grandson is matriculating in the Florida State this year.
Everyone for participating. Appreciate it. My pleasure.
One quick reminder about the RLI Institute, August 6th down at Palm Coast. You can register on DAC TV. So let me recognize Crystal Brown to introduce our speaker today.
Good afternoon. So we're continuing with our theme on the history of Jacksonville. And during my involvement with the Historical Society in Jacksonville, I learned that they have a music museum that they're creating. And so through that, through a number of people, I was looking for a speaker on the history of music in Jacksonville, which we have a wonderful music history. It was recommended to me to bring in Michael Ray FitzGerald. Mr. FitzGerald is a freelance writer and a median historian. And he's written hundreds of articles in national, local, international publications. He actually is a former career musician.
If you go online, you will see a totally different looking person than what is here today. And so he has I think the last band that he played in at the Landing was called Chain of Fools. He's up there with his guitar, and he has a bachelor's degree in journalism from Jacksonville University, a master's in mass communication from the University of Florida, where he also taught journalism, and he has a doctorate from the University of Reading in Berkshire, England. He has taught at the University of North Florida, Flagler College, and the College of Coastal Georgia. He is also the author of a book called The Jacksonville and the Roots of Southern Rock, which you can get on Amazon. You can also get from the local library. And he also was telling me over lunch that a book that is more than Southern rock, it's more about more music in this part of the country. It's called Swamp Music, Gator Country's Musical Legacy. So he's going to talk to us about the history of Southern rock in Jacksonville. Welcome, Mr. Fitz.
Hey, this is a great group. A lot of nice people here.
I was a little late on that.
I wish I had a nickel for every time I had to play that song in a bar. So I want to thank Crystal for hunting me down and inviting me here. I need to find that clicker for the PowerPoint presentation.
You took it backwards?
Did I?
Your table.
I hope I didn't.
Well, it's not here. Is it over there?
I can manually just work.
Okay. Man, if I had a brain, I'd be dangerous. So anyway, she was talking about Jacksonville's musical.
Short pocket.
Yeah.
It's not the point of it, right?
It was a joke. Okay. All righty. So how many Jacksonville natives do we have in here? Oh, that's a lot more than I expected. You know, because it's sort of becoming an international city and a very, diverse city. And my family moved here in 1968. My father came down, he was transferred here in the Navy. So there's an awful lot of Navy people my age, and a lot of them played guitar too. So today I'm going to talk about my 2020 book, Jacksonville and the Roots of Southern Rock. I won a Florida Book Award, by the way. I didn't bring any with me because I don't want to get in trouble with the state of Florida about that sales tax business, So it'd be better if you just buy them if you want interested in a copy, just buy it on Amazon.
Tell them it's a school book this week. Tax-free.
Well, I suppose that'd be within the realm of possibility. So anyway, why did I write this book? Well, because Jacksonville has a very rich musical history, and this was probably the most famous aspect of it. So what is some of the things Jacksonville is famous for?
Leonard Skinner.
Okay, what else? NFL, right?
May Axton.
Oh, that's a good one. Does everybody know who May Axton is? Well, I'll come to that in the presentation. And don't forget the smell. Remember the smell?
Yes. Keith Axton, Jack Bell. No, that's the other one.
Yeah, it's gone now, and I guess it was Hazuri who put an end to it.
Yeah.
Godbold said, it smells like money. But I think Hazuri helped initiate a plan to get rid of the smell, and I do remember that smell. Pretty bad. So unfortunately, that was the thing Jacksonville was the most famous for when I moved here. So I'd say Southern Rock is probably the second most famous. So I want to talk about some of the forerunners of Southern Rock, some of the people who weren't actually considered Southern Rock, but their art was helped inspire the Southern Rockers, and the Southern Rockers based, work on some of these guys. And the main guy to talk about is Ray Charles. Because he played so many different styles of music, not just R&B or gospel. He was brought up, in a Baptist church, and he learned the gospel music. And then he went blind at age 7. At 15, his mother sent him, no, I can't remember, at 10, his mother sent him to the St. Augustine School for the Deaf and Blind. That's the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind in St. Augustine. He quit at age 15. Where did he come? Came to Jacksonville to look for work as a musician. He lived over in La Villa, right on West Church Street, where La Villa School of the Arts is now. He lived there for a little while. Came to Jacksonville, was scuffling real hard, couldn't find any work, left for Orlando, left for Tampa, played in country western bands. He played in a country western band, they called it hillbilly music back then. He played in a hillbilly band that Marshall Rowland was also in. I think Marshall was playing pedal steel. Marshall Rowland went on to found WQIK radio. So Ray Charles is such a versatile player. He played R&B, gospel, hillbilly music, country music. Y'all know his country work, right? Born to Lose and I Can't Stop Loving You. Those were huge. And jazz and just about everything else. So that's another one of the foundation of Southern rock, because you can't really put your fingers on what Southern rock is, because it's a whole bunch of different things. Okay, somebody mentioned Mae Axton. Her husband was a Navy pilot. They moved here from Oklahoma in 1945 during World War II. And she taught English at a couple of different schools here in town. And her husband was a PE coach at Paxson. And I think at Lee also, football coach too. And she started writing columns about our teenagers for Charlton Publications out of Connecticut. And then she started writing about hillbilly music. And this took her to Nashville. And being the opportunist she was, you couldn't believe what kind of a networker this woman was. When she got to Nashville, she met Minnie Pearl, and Minnie Pearl introduced her to Fred Rose, who was partners with Roy Acuff and the biggest publishing company in Nashville. So guess what? Yeah, I got some songs. You need some songs? I got some songs. So she started writing songs, and she had a couple of her songs published by some country acts. Didn't do anything big. She also she met Colonel Tom Parker, who was Elvis Presley's manager. The young man on the left right there. And she had some insider information. She knew that Presley's contract was being bought by RCA Records. He was on a small label out of Memphis. And she knew that he was getting ready to go big time. And so she and Tommy Durden, a local pedal steel player on Toby Dowdy. It wasn't the Toby Dowdy show, it was McDuff Hayride, but Toby Dowdy was the host. She got with Tommy and helped him finish the song he'd been working on called Heartbreak Hotel.
Oh, God.
She brought an acetate. They made a demo with Glenn Reeves singing it, and Glenn Reeves was doing his best Elvis imitation, and then Elvis copied Glenn Reeves copying him. So she went to a DJ convention in Nashville with a little record player and acetate dub, like a plastic wax 45. And she played it for Elvis in his hotel room. She brought it to him personally, and he loved it. And it was his first record on RCA, and it was his first million seller. And I'm sure it paid for a couple of houses for Meg and for Tommy Durden. And her son was Hoyt Axton, I'll get to in a minute. Johnny Tillotson is from Jacksonville. This is still the precursors of Southern rock. He was a pop crooner. He started off as a country singer, and he went over to becoming a pop crooner, like Eddie Arnold would have, or Ray Price. They weren't really doing country anymore, and neither was he. And he's a pretty boy pop crooner, and he met Mae Axton. According to her, and some of her accounts need to be taken with a grain of salt, but according to her, he showed up at her doorstep one day on Delwood Avenue in Murray Hill. And so she just thought he was the greatest, and he had a lot of star potential, and he had the look. So she got him a spot on Toby Dowdy's show. I don't know if any of this is really true or not. He disputes. I talked to him about it. He kind of politely disputes this. But anyway, here's Johnny Tillotson with Ray Charles, both from Jacksonville. Well, Ray Charles is actually from Greenville, but he's from this part of the country. And Tillotson had a number 2 record with Poetry in Motion in 1960. Now here's May's son Hoyt. That's May on the right there, and that's Hoyt. Anybody remember Hoyt Axton? He graduated from Lee High School. On graduation night, he was a little under the influence and he played a prank. He took a smudge pot. Anybody remember what a smudge pot is?
Yeah.
Before they had flashers, they would have these little pots full of kerosene or grease or something, and they would light a flame, and the flame would burn all night, and that's how you knew not to drive in that pothole. He picked one up and threw it through a plate glass window at Canal Hardware on Canal Street and burned it down all the way down. The police charged him with arson. Well, that's not arson. That's just, malicious mischief. Arson has to be for financial gain. He didn't do it for financial gain. He did it for stupidity. And he didn't get convicted. They had to drop the charges because it was the wrong charge, but the owners put a civil suit on him and he couldn't play in Jacksonville because they would send the sheriff to seize his receipts. But he wrote some really big songs. You know the one, Jeremiah was the bullfrog. Yeah. That's the one he wrote. Everybody knows that, Joy to the World. He wrote the No-No song for Ringo Starr. He wrote a whole bunch of big hits. Anybody heard Work Your Fingers to the Bone? What do you get? Bony fingers. Bony fingers. That's my favorite by Hoyt Axton. And his mother wound up managing him later, a few years before she died, and running his record label. Here's a group that is sort of bridges the gap between folk rock, which was real popular in 65, 66, and Southern rock, because all these guys went on to be in Southern rock bands. This here's Scott Boyer, who's from upstate New York, but he moved to Jacksonville, moved to Arlington when he was like early teenager. David Brown, I think he is from Jacksonville, and Butch Trucks, who is also from Jacksonville. He wound up being the drummer for the Allman Brothers Band. So these guys put this group together in college. They all knew each other from around Jacksonville. They had all jammed with each other. They shared the same dorm floor, the dorms at Florida State, FSU, in Tallahassee. And so that's where they put this group together. And they copied the Byrds, and all their stuff sounds like the Byrds. If you get a hold of any of their records, and they all three sang harmony, and they were Byrds clones, and they came back to Jacksonville, and they were really, really big. Biggest band in town for a long time. They played at the Comic Book Club. They were the house band there. They were on their own TV show. Don Dana managed them. They made a lot of money. They were driving Corvettes and stuff. And they went to Miami and recorded an album that got released on Vanguard Records. And then to do their second album, they brought in Dwayne and Greg Allman. They incorporated Dwayne, the actual Allman Brothers themselves, into their group. So that's how Butch met Dwayne Allman, and it would, definitely come back to it. Speaking of Dwayne and Greg Allman, here's the Allman Joys from Daytona Beach. Well, it doesn't have a lot to do with Jacksonville, but Dwayne did live in Jacksonville Dwayne Allman did live in Jacksonville for 1 year. And like I said, he and Greg were in Butch Trucks' band for a brief time in 68 or 69. That's Dwayne on the left, standing up with the Gibson 335, and that's Greg on the right with the bar across his face. I don't know why that's there. You'll never believe this, but in this band, Dwayne sang lead and Greg played lead guitar. I mean, if you know anything about the Allman Brothers, they would switch those roles, and Dwayne would become one of the hot lead players of the whole southern region, and Greg one of the greatest vocalists. And one of Greg's main influence, by the way, was Ray Charles. Classics 4 was a group from Jacksonville. I think all these guys were from Jacksonville except Dennis Yost, the drummer, who was from Detroit, but he moved here when he was 7 years old. And they're all from the north side. Yost went to Jackson High. J.R. Cobb in the middle there went to Paxson. And then the two guys in the front, Walter Eaton and Joe Wilson, I believe they both went to Jackson High also. So it was basically a north side group. And it started off as a guitar group, and they played Ventures music. And then they got Dennis in, and they found out he could sing. They didn't know he could sing. They brought Dennis in from a group called the Echoes on drums. And so he would sing standing up. Here he is standing up while playing drums and singing. And this was a really huge group in Jacksonville too, but they played a lot of bars and nightclubs. They played the Golden Gate Lounge over on Cassett Avenue, and they were the house band there, and they did a couple of singles, and they were just a, regular old bar band. Nobody thought much about them. And so they got rid of the guitar instrumentalists, and they started concentrating on their vocals, and they tried to sound a lot like the Four Seasons. They got a gig in Daytona Beach at the Daytona Plaza Hotel, and a talent agent from Atlanta walks in, and he was real, I can't remember his name, Paul Cochran from Tampa, but he was affiliated with Lowry Music in Atlanta. And so he walks in and said, "How would you guys like to make a record?" And they're like, "Sure. Well, you have to move to Atlanta." So they did, made a record. It stiffed. They made a second record. They couldn't even hardly find a deal. Bill Lowry couldn't even hardly find a label to pick it up. And they made 2 records on Capitol that stiffed, and then they made their 3rd record on Imperial and went to #2. Anybody know what it was?
That's the one about faded photographs.
That's the same group, but that was a couple of years later. It was Spooky. In the cool of the evening when everything is getting kind of groovy. That's Dennis singing, and the guy had a great voice. So they went from being a ventures type guitar band to what you'd have to call lounge lizards, right? Soft rock. But they sold a lot of records. J.R. Cobb, here he is on the left. He graduated from Paxson in '62, and on the right is drummer Robert Nix, who was at one time, he was the second drummer for the Classics. They both formed a band in 1970 called the Rhythm Section, but they're both from Jacksonville, and they both graduated from Paxson High in 1962. So, Southern rock, the foundations of Southern rock in Jacksonville are really strong. Graham Parsons is not a Southern rocker. They called him a country rocker or a folk rocker. He was born in Winter Haven, grew up in Waycross, came to Jacksonville and attended the Bowl School a couple of times. They don't like to talk about him at the Bowl School, because he died of a drug overdose and a heroin overdose. And the people at Bowls don't really want to be associated with that. Can you blame them? He did lead a real degenerate lifestyle, but he was a nice boy for a while anyway. This is his Bowls picture from the Bowls yearbook. And this is him later with his nudie suit. It was the same guy who did Elvis's jumpsuit. And of course, he's got the marijuana leaves on it and everything else. And people consider him the grandfather of country rock, but he's not. There were other people doing it before him. Poco and the Byrds were doing country rock. He was a member of the Byrds briefly, but I like to present him as a forerunner of Southern rock because he was a big influence on the Bitter End. All those guys loved him. Everybody in Jacksonville, who knew music back then followed him, and he was a huge influence. And Ray Charles was one of his huge influences because he loved the way Ray used country music and mixed country music and rhythm and blues.
And Parsons did that as well. He mixed country music and rock and rhythm and blues. This is a group from Tampa or Bradenton, from the Tampa Bay area, featuring a guitar player named Dickie Betts. And I saw him many, many times. They moved to Jacksonville the same year I did in 1968. And they played all around town. They were the first and premier psychedelic band in Jacksonville. They played all the latest hippie stuff. He would do a mean Eric Clapton impression. He could play Crossroads and give Clapton a run for his money. And they would do Steppenwolf and the Jefferson Airplane and all that stuff. And there's his buddy Barry Oakley, who's from Chicago, but he met Dickie in the Tampa area. And they formed a band called the Blues Messengers. And Leonard Rensler, a bar owner from Jacksonville, he owned the Scene and a few other bars, was in Tampa and saw them one night and said, why don't you all come up and play at my new bar? I'm going to have this psychedelic format, you know, with lights on the dance floor and everything, all psychedelic business. And he said, and I want you to change the name of the group. From the Blues Messengers, I want you to change it to the Second Coming. He thought this was really cute. And because can anybody understand why he wanted them to change their name to the Second Coming? Because he thought Barry Oakley looked like Jesus. True story. So they came to Jacksonville, the first and most prominent psychedelic band in Jacksonville, and they just cornered the market. They couldn't reach too many hippies in the bars because the hippies were all underage in 1968. So they're like, man, they're getting like 20 sailors at their gig, and this is not the audience they want. How do we reach the audience we want? How do we reach our people? You know, the long hairs. And so Barry had this idea of doing free concerts in Willow Branch Park. And so they called them be-ins. You know, like it's like a sit-in, only you be in. And so he started that, and it became a huge tradition in Jacksonville for many years. This is another group from Tampa, a guy from Bradenton in the middle is named Larry Reinhardt. He was actually in the Second Coming with Dickie Betts. And that's Barry Oakley over there on the right. That's Dwayne Allman on the left. He left the Second Coming to start his own little power trio. Betts used to do all the Clapton stuff, the Cream stuff. And Reinhardt used to do the Hendrix stuff. He was a Hendrix imitator. And so he left the Second Coming and started his own group called The Load, and they got a house band gig at Dubs in Gainesville. They both had the same managers. Okay, so now I'm going to get to the actual Southern rock era, which I suppose you could say started with the Second Coming and Dickie Betts and Barry Oakley. And Dwayne Allman came to town, and he sat in at a lot of these be-ins. And he even lived in the same house where Dickie Betts and Barry Oakley lived on Riverside Avenue. And there's a plaque in front of that house now. Anybody know what I'm talking about? 2844 Riverside Avenue. It's called the Gray House. And there's a historical plaque in front of it. I should have brought a picture of it. And so Dwayne was living in Jacksonville for about a year. A lot of people don't know that. And then he decided he was going to move to Muscle Shoals and become a session player. I think my personal speculation is that he was angling to get into the Second Coming. And for some reason, that just didn't work out. Here's his group before he came to Jacksonville called the Hourglass. And that's an outshoot of the Almond Joys. They got 3 new players. That's Dwayne and Greg on the left. They got 3 new players from Alabama. And they formed a new group called the Hourglass. Got discovered by Nitty Gritty Dirt Band's manager in St. Louis and moved to Los Angeles and got a record deal with Liberty Records. And they put 2 albums out and they both flopped and nothing happened for these guys. They were in Los Angeles. They couldn't get gigs. They played a few gigs, but not enough. They couldn't make a living. They were on a record company, Dole. Their album stiffed and they weren't doing anything. So they just said to hell with it and came back to Florida. And that's when Dwayne and Greg joined Butch Trucks band the 31st of February. So Dwayne moved to Muscle Shoals and he got a job as a session player at Fame Studios, Florence, Alabama Music Enterprises, run by Rick Hall. And Rick Hall signed Dwayne, signed him to a record deal also. But the problem is, he didn't sing or worth the crap anyway, and he didn't write songs. So what are we going to do with this guy? So they brought in Phil Walden from Macon, and Phil helped him put this band together. So here's Dickie and Barry from the Second Coming, whom he came down to Jacksonville to recruit. There's Butch Trucks, also he came down to Jacksonville to recruit. And this is the drummer Jamo, or Johnny Johnson, who was from Mississippi, and you met him in Macon, Georgia. So this is the Allman Brothers Band. Their first album didn't really do much. I had it, I bought it. It was a great album, but it only sold 35,000 copies. Their second album, same story, didn't do much. They broke through on their third album, at the Fillmore East. That became their hit record, the one that put them on the map. There's another group from Jacksonville called Cowboy. This is Scott Boyer from The Bitter End and the 31st of February. And Tommy Talton was from an Orlando group called We the People. And these other guys are all from Jacksonville. Bill Pillmore on guitar and keyboards. And they met in Orlando, in Gainesville and Orlando, and they moved to Jacksonville. Why did they move to Jacksonville? Because Jacksonville was the place to be in 1970. There were lots of gigs. My God, there were teen clubs, bottle clubs, nightclubs, be-ins, you name it. There were so many gigs you could come to Jacksonville and make a living. So they did. And here they are later on in '66 after they signed with Capricorn Records. Dwayne recommended them to Phil Walden of Capricorn Records, and Phil Walden signed them on Dwayne's recommendation. And they moved to Macon, and there they are in Macon, but it's almost a whole different band. The only original members, Scott Boyer and Tommy Talton. That's these two right here. And then this is David Brown from the 31st of February. So it's a real incestuous scene, you know? And it wasn't so much what you knew, is who you knew. Or is it whom? Whom you knew. So when the big time band left, the Second Coming left, this group stepped up and picked up, a lot of fans, picked up the baton, let's say. This is the 1%, and people, they were a terrible, terrible, terrible band. I saw them, they didn't even know how to tune the guitars. I saw them at the Sugar Bowl in '69, and I saw them that same year at the Forest Inn. And the singer goes, and they didn't like the name, they had to get a new name, 1%, because people were saying, yeah, 1% talent. And it was pissing them off. So the singer I'm watching them one night at the Forest Inn, and the singer goes, hey y'all, we're thinking about changing the name of the group. What y'all think? We're thinking about changing to Leonard Skinner. Well, Leonard Skinner was a PE coach at Lee High School. The only guy who suffered under Leonard Skinner's reign was Gary Rossington over there on the right in the back standing up. But it was a running joke that Leonard Skinner's going to get you. And so they named it. So I'm standing there, and he said, what do you think about we change the name of the group to Leonard Skinner? And the crowd went, wow, well, they were mostly Lee High students. And so they loved it. They laughed, and they said, yeah. And I'm standing, I was an Orange Park student. I didn't know who Leonard Skinner was. So I said to this tall hippie standing beside me, I said, who's Leonard Skinner? And he goes, oh, he's the PE coach who hassles them about their hair. So they made him famous. And let's see, that's Ronnie Van Zandt on the left, Bob Burns in the middle, Gary Rossington in the back, Larry Junstrom on bass in the front and center, and Alan Collins on guitar on the right, on the bottom right. And they formed the group in my neighborhood, right around the corner from the Forest Inn. This carport's not even a half a mile from the Forest Inn in the Hyde Park area on Park Street, Park and Alicia. That's where the group was formed. Ronnie Van Zant wasn't in it. It was Bob Burns, Gary Rossington, and Larry Junstrom, and the group was called Me, You, and Him. And Ronnie Van Zant wasn't even there. But he did show up. He was with a group called Us with a friend of mine, and that group broke up. And he did show up at this house one day to meet Bob Burns, and he was a notorious tough guy. Ronnie Van Zant was a notorious tough guy and a bully. And he knocks on the door, and Bob Burns answers there, goes, Ronnie, what do you want? He said, I don't want to fight you, man. And Ronnie goes, I ain't here to fight. I'm a singer. And Bob says, oh, you're a singer? Yes, I'm a singer. He says, well, Bob says, well, I got a guitar player and I got a bass player and I play drums. Why don't let's put something together? So that was the actual formation of Leonard Skinner. Right here. And here's the group with Steve Gaines in it in the bottom right there, in second from the right. This is the group with 7 pieces just before the plane crash in October of '77. They went on to be really huge. As a matter of fact, they're still huge. Can you believe it? They're getting bigger and bigger by the year, and it's the old-fashioned way. They don't have hit records anymore, but they're doing that touring and building up fans one by one, by word of mouth. And they still, I mean, if you look at Sweet Home Alabama on YouTube, it's got something like 500 million hits, like 500 million hits. Another group from Jacksonville, West Side, Paxson, Blackfoot, Ricky Medlock in the left there. He's now in Leonard Skinner. So again, it's a very incestuous scene. All these guys knew each other. 38 Special, the singer in the front and center there, that's Donnie Van Zant. That's Ronnie Van Zant's little brother. Again, not what you know, but who you know. These guys had more hit singles than any other band from Jacksonville. They had 15 top 40 hit singles. 15. That's phenomenal. Molly Hatchet, Danny Joe Brown was the lead singer. When Leonard Skinner had its plane crash, these guys kind of stepped up and filled the void in the market for Southern rock. And they had 2 platinum albums and many gold albums, and they're still touring to this day. However, there are no original members in the group. Johnny Van Zant, little nepotism again. Johnny's in the middle there is Ronnie Van Zant's youngest brother. He started as a drummer, put this group together about 1979. This was a group from the West Side called Alias, and the singer there on the top left was the drummer for he was a drummer for Black Bear Angel, but he would wind up being the lead singer for what was left of Skinner in 1983. Rawson and Collins Band was the reincarnation of Leonard Skinner. You can see Rawson and Collins. This is Rawson, guitarist. This is Collins. This is and all the rest. Well, and this is 2 guys from Skinner, Leon Wilkerson and Billy Powell, and all the rest of them are new players. And they had a new singer named Dale Krantz because they didn't want to bring in a man, because they thought he would be compared to Ronnie Van Zant. So this was their workaround, is to get a woman. And they had a hit record. Anybody remember Don't Misunderstand Me? They had a hit record. So Rossington and his wife Dale quit the group. So here they got Jimmy Doherty squatting down there to be their lead singer. And there's Randall Hall on the left from the West Side on guitar, a West Connect boy. These guys didn't do too well. Album stiffed. They got dropped by MCA. Now it's pretty much the end of what was left of Leonard Skinner for a long time. So here's me with Alan Collins at a bar in Vidalia, Georgia in 1984. He came up to sit in with my group. And, I hate to say this because, Alan's a great guy, but he was so messed up at this point that he fell off the stage and broke that guitar. Bam. But he was a great bunch of guys. And here I am with Leon Wilkerson down there in the bottom left aboard the Annabelle Lee in 1989. And he was a really sweet guy. The thing is, you know, the idea, the image of these Skinner boys being such badasses, it's not really true. Ronnie Van Zant was the only real badass in that group, and the rest of them were hippies and peaceniks, and they were all pretty much a sweet bunch of guys. And they were all suburban punks, you know, they weren't. This publicity used to say that they came from the wrong side of the tracks, and, you know, Ronnie said they were like street people, and, you know, Skid Row and that sort of thing. Man, that's so not true. That is so not true. I mean, Alan Collins' mother had bought him 5 really expensive guitars by the time he was 18 years old. Ronnie Van Zant, on his 16th birthday, his father bought him a brand new Mustang. It was like the first year the Mustangs came out. I mean, my dad didn't buy me no Mustang. My dad didn't buy me no new car. So these guys, you know, they were just middle incomes, you know, regular cinder block, you know, suburban houses type kids, and they weren't from the wrong side of the tracks at all. Oh, Derek Trucks, you probably have heard of him. This is him at 9 years old, sitting in with Ace Moreland's band. That's when I first saw him. The guitar was practically bigger than he was. And here he is now, 40-something years old. He's got his own group, the Tedeschi Trucks Band, 12 pieces. They're not really Southern rock. It's more of like a R&B, a blues and soul group. But blues and soul, white blues and soul groups have been incorporated into Southern rock. Somehow that can be considered rock. Southern rock has no real specific definition. It can be anything we say it is. Like Wet Willie is a R&B, is a soul and blues group from Mobile. So they're welcomed into the Southern rock fold. Southern rock can be all different kinds of music. Mofro and JJ Gray and Mofro, they're kind of like one of the latest iterations of Southern rock from Jacksonville. Never been really huge, got a strong cult following now. And Van Zant was a duo of the Van Zant brothers, Johnny on the left, Donnie on the right, and they signed to Columbia Records as a country act and had a top 5 country single. And I don't know what happened to that. It just dissolved and went away, and they won't talk about it. They won't talk about what happened to their careers as country singers, but they were huge as country singers. Oh yeah, here's the Derek Trucks' band with his wife, Susan Tedeschi, who's from Boston. She's a pretty good guitar player herself. Like I said, it's mostly a blues and soul group. That's pretty much it.
Wow.
Well, I tell you what, hang a little bit. That's okay. And Michael, thank you very much. It's an amazing history, and I ask that you take this as a little recognition.
Yeah.
Being here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
All right. Reminder, join us next week when our speaker will be Bill Delaney, who is the author about the weird, wonderful, and obscure Jacksonville. Imagine he's coming to this chapter to expand his book. I don't know. As we end our meeting, some people get my weird sense of humor. I ask that you stand and join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you all for coming.